Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second event in the series Slovenian Businesswomen Around the Globe. These series are organized under the auspices of Slovenian Global Business Network. The organizing partners of the series are Zavod Viden, Skoza Legal and Venture, MAPR, and Future Female Slovenia. The series are co-financed by Government Office for Slovenians Abroad and SLOBRAS, Chamber of Commerce Slovenia, Brazil. Finally, a warm welcome to Dora from Microsoft and Sara from Google. Unfortunately, Teja from Facebook couldn't join us. Now I would like to pass the microphone to Špela.
Great, thank you, Teja. A warm welcome from me as well. As Teja already mentioned, we have two very special guests with us, I guess. This is Sara Rotter Šešok from Google and Dora Babošek from Microsoft. I just found out that they are actually best friends since I guess since you were two, right? So I hope we'll have like a very relaxed conversation. And I guess I recommend we just dive into this conversation. I wouldn't introduce you anymore because I think this is the point of this roundtable, to get to know you, to get to know your career and your path. And yes, maybe to start with you, Sara. I'm really interested to know what and where did you study and what were your first steps in your career?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I have a bachelor's degree in marketing communications and a master's degree in business. And I did both of the courses at the University of Ljubljana. I'd say I was quite busy as a student already. I was a very active member of Student Marketing Association of Slovenia. I was doing numerous student jobs and testing myself in different areas and trying to figure out what I really like. As well as during my studies, I took the opportunity to study abroad. I spent an Erasmus year in Germany, an amazing summer in South Korea. And that really gave me kind of this wanderlust. I really wanted to live abroad and live in this multicultural environment. As I was entering my second year of my master's degree, I felt it's time to start looking for a first job. And I landed a gig at a company called Comtrade, a Slovenian IT company, as a marketing manager. And that was an amazing first job experience.
Great. Okay, so you actually started in Slovenia and then moved abroad, as we'll get to know more later. So Dora, were you a classmate from Sara as well, or did you study something else?
Yeah, so first, hi everyone. Apologies for the non-professional lighting. I'm actually skiing in Italy, so apologies. Hopefully you can see me well. But to answer your question, Špela, we did not really study together. I don't think we did. We did go to kindergarten together, to primary school together, but then our paths kind of separated when we got to university. So I studied at the University of Ljubljana, Faculty of Economics, where the same, I think, as Sara, I took advantage of the programs and studied abroad quite a bit. I went to Turkey, to Russia, and to Canada. So I gathered quite a bit of experience, which, you know, also highlighted me to the potential or the future employers that I then interviewed for a couple of years later. So I think that's definitely the first tip from my side when it comes to studying and for setting yourself up for success, is to take advantage, especially in Slovenia. I think we have a lot of programs that support international exchange. So I did, I studied at the University of Ljubljana, and then actually my first real job was in Dublin. So I did not have a full-time job in Slovenia until last year, but I started obviously as a student working different student jobs and then moved to Dublin in 2018.
Okay, but if I'm not wrong, you started in Dublin, not in Microsoft, right? You were first employed somewhere else. And then what actually brought you to Microsoft? How did you get the opportunity?
Yeah. So I started in Dublin working at Salesforce, which is also a very big, very well-known software company. And that was kind of the first step towards my long-term plan of getting good experience in abroad and moving back to Slovenia if the opportunity arises. And it did. So from my perspective, to get to Salesforce, first international experience from studying, put me on the map for them when I was interviewing, and I was able to show, that I am able to work in a multicultural environment. And then from Salesforce, because I worked there for 2 years, that's a very good company on your CV to have if you are looking to pursue anything sales related, because they do really, empower you and invest in you, in your knowledge and in your skilling. So after 2.5 years, an opportunity showed up at Microsoft in Dublin, actually. And I interviewed, and, when I got the offer, obviously you go plus minus. And one of the main pluses, because I was enjoying Salesforce, was the fact that potentially I could move to Slovenia with Microsoft. And only a year later, that opportunity came and I moved. So it was quite a short journey back home.
Okay, great. So Sarah, I think probably everyone is wondering, how did you land the gig in Google?
Yeah, it's actually quite a funny story. So as I was working on Comtrade, it was an amazing first job experience. I had tons of opportunities to learn about digital marketing, and I became a Google guru. I knew everything about analytics, ads, anything that Google has to offer, SEO. So I was really enthusiastic. And one day I was reading an article on Slovenian magazine Pirnat that was talking about foreign companies looking for Slovenian speakers. And I saw a job at Google. And I thought, you know what, I might as well just give it a try. I'll never get this job.
Wow.
And when a recruiter reached out to me, I couldn't believe it. I first thought it's perhaps a scam. But 6 interviews in, half a year in, I was moving to Dublin. I kind of started in a very entry-level position. I was support for Slovenian and Adriatic markets. So I was associate account strategist at that time. But Google gives you tons of opportunities to, learn and develop and grow. And so I changed quite a few roles in my time at Google.
Okay, great. Sorry, just to confirm, did I hear 16 or 6 interviews?
6, sorry.
Okay, 16 would be quite a lot. Even 6 is a lot. But did you do anything special when applying for this job for Google? Did you do anything different than maybe when you were applying for jobs in Slovenia?
I think it's very important to personalize your CV, but I wouldn't say I did anything mind-blowing. I just really made a structured CV where I very clearly wrote what were my achievements, tried to put some numbers to my achievements. That's always very important.
Yeah.
But that was it. But if I were to give advice to people who want to apply to Google and what to do, and especially if they're not applying to entry-level role like I was at that time, it's very important that you kind of personalize your CV to the role description, that you try to write, your achievements, but not only in a fluffy way, but also kind of back them up with numbers. I think that is really important. But on the other hand, it's also great if you are not afraid to connect to people, for instance, over LinkedIn, introduce yourself and actually ask them for a referral. I think all tech companies, I think referrals are a very good way to kind of land the first interview at the tech company.
Oh, okay. That's actually very interesting to learn, because I don't think Slovenia is very, I don't think that's very often here yet, I guess. Maybe abroad it's more common.
We have an idea that great people know great people. Of course, it's not like we refer any person that reaches out, but if you would want to connect with me, share your experience, and if I thought you were a great fit, I'm very happy always to refer people to the job. I know that in Slovenia, referrals are very often regarded as visa connections, and that has a very bad connotation. But this doesn't mean that, okay, I know a cousin of a cousin, I'm going to get them a job at Google. It's more of, I know a great young professional who does amazing things and would be a great fit for that role. I'm very happy to refer them, write nice stuff about them. But then, of course, it's on them to actually interview and prove themselves and land the job.
Okay, interesting. I see we lost Dora, if I'm not wrong. So maybe we'll just continue on, and I hope she can join us back. Okay, so Sara, for everyone that isn't working in your field of expertise, what is your title and what do you actually do? If you can explain us in a layman's words.
Sure. I work as a luxury account lead, and that's a sales role in Google's ads organization. I'm working with some of Google's largest companies, and I help them, I advise them on media creation, measurement, data, and technology tools that help them grow. And basically, as a global client executive, I do things like I plan annual strategic plans for the client. I lead commercial negotiations. I do business reviews. I conduct trainings. I consult and just nurture relationship with the key client representatives. But at the same time, because I'm working in a global role, I also do a lot of coordination with our local teams that are working on the same client, making sure that we are aligned, that we show ourselves as one Google, connect them to different fields of Google, for instance, Google Cloud, and also regularly monitor the trends in the industry that my client operates and make sure that I kind of share those trends with the people that I work with.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So Dora, back to you. Maybe if you could also explain us what is your actual title and the job behind it.
Yeah, apologies, I dropped off, so hopefully it's not going to happen mid-speech. Yeah, so I'm an enterprise account executive for public sector. So this means it's kind of a similar role to Sara when it comes to the general scope of the role. So I maintain the customer relationship. I have to understand where they are at each point or at each year of our contracts. I am responsible for renewing their contracts, for making sure that the right people at Microsoft speak to them and listen to them, explain the new technology, handle objections or any concerns we might have, because public sector obviously is, let's say, not the most most open to the most recent innovations or the technologies that we are pushing out, every day or every month, every week at this point. So they need to be a bit more careful, in their choices. So this is kind of where me and my team step in. And obviously, as an account executive, my main responsibility is bringing in the revenue, and my team then we make sure that the customers obviously are on the track where we both have the same understanding of what they need now, what they need in 5 years, and that we help them grow.
Okay, great. So you both have a very strategic job, I guess. You have to plan ahead and think about all the possibilities that are there for your clients.
But we're both working in a sales role in a tech company, so I guess we have quite similar experiences. But there, of course, there is a very wide spectrum of what you can do in a tech company.
Yeah, we're both. Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say we're both from more of a sales side of things. Obviously, there's a lot of developers or more technical people employed in our companies, but since we are the same kind of profile, I guess we ended up in these kinds of jobs.
Yeah, but I think it's still interesting to learn, both of you, and get to know your jobs, I guess, because you can compare the two actually very similar roles in different companies, different big tech companies, which is very interesting as well. But if we take a step back and go again to the recruitment process, because we got a very interesting question from the audience. They are very interested to know, what did the recruitment process look like? I think, Sara, you already talked about this a bit. So you had 6 interviews. Did you had any psychological testing or any special, I guess, assignments?
No, so we do, it really depends on how many phases of interviews we do. I don't know what's the official number, but first interviews are usually more light screenings, trying to understand whether you have the right role-related knowledge. And then as you go deeper into the interview rounds, we are testing based on certain attributes that we are looking for our employees to have. So, you know, topics like leadership, general cognitive ability, and similar is what we are asking. But we do not do any psychological quizzes. Or also, I think there is a myth that Google does those kind of, I don't know how to say it very nicely, but mind trick kind of questions where you need to answer something that seems completely outrageous. We don't really do that anymore. We really just want to understand whether a person is a great fit for the company, and also how the person thinks and whether they would, whether they would fit in.
Okay, so sounds pretty normal. And how was it for you, Dora? Did you also had 6 interviews, or was it less, more?
So I actually also interviewed for Google at one point at the beginning. I also interviewed for Salesforce, and I interviewed for Microsoft. I think Google had the longest, like per my experience and my colleagues' experience, has a bit of a longer, how do you say, period, or a longer, a longer way of doing it. But I also think it depends on the role, on the availability, on how many people apply for the job. So for me personally, when it came to Salesforce, it was very straightforward. I had one interview with a recruiter online, one interview with a hiring manager online, and then they flew me to Dublin, which was pre-COVID. Since then, we've been just doing everything online. And on site, when they flew me to Dublin, I think I had a full day of interviews with, I think, 3 separate people, and then a panel of 3 people at the same time. So technically, there were even more people than Sara had rounds of. Then when it came to Microsoft, I had, I believe, 4 rounds, 4 to 5, from different leadership people and from the manager. And that was also pretty straightforward. So for me, all of the processes took about 2 months, 2 to 3 months. But obviously, if someone else is a better fit or something changes, sometimes these processes take longer. And also, I'd like to add to Sara's point, depending on the role, and if it's an entry-level role or a more, senior, the questions or the approach or what they're looking for will differ. So for me, coming in as completely entry-level, and for Sara, I'm sure quite similar, when she started at Google, they were mostly looking for certain soft skills, how you communicate, obviously how well you speak English, how you present yourself, how you structure your answers. So I think that's very important. And also that they see the motivation. So why do you want to move to Dublin or join Microsoft Salesforce? What can you bring to the team, to the table? Because, many things can be taught, but sometimes attitude and certain soft skills are a bit more difficult to teach than technology. So those are the things that I would maybe say, that don't be scared if you're going in without any experience. Just make sure that you show your personality, that you show your scope, if you studied abroad a lot, if you did very relevant things in your student jobs, so that they get an understanding who they're hiring and that they like you as a person. Because I think also for Google as well, I know for Sara, the more official or a well-known term is Googliness, so they look for that. We don't have a term like that, but I'm sure that when they hire, they're looking for someone that fits into the teams, because culture is very important.
And if I may just add, I think, especially then if you're not applying for entry-level role, but for more experienced roles, it's really important to do your research. There are websites like Glassdoor, for instance, where you're able to do research on salary ranges, questions asked at the interviews. I would recommend anyone who is applying to always go through interviews and think what they would answer. And it's always good to have some examples of work and some scenarios that you can then just answer whatever the question is. You can just tailor your scenario and put it in the answer.
Okay, perfect. Very interesting. So if we talk about your work and what you do now, do you think you have a lot of flexibility when you have to make a decision, or so do you have the autonomy to decide by yourself, or are you very limited by the hierarchy of the whole company? Either of you can answer first. I don't mind.
So I can speak for Google. I would say I have a lot of autonomy at work. So of course I do a sales job, so I do have metrics to deliver, but as long as my metrics and targets are reached, I have full flexibility in how I will approach them and how I will deliver them. I would also say that while we of course are quite a large company, so we do have a reporting structure, the doors of our directors and VPs and alike are always open. And even as the most junior person, you have an opportunity to speak to your execs, voice your opinion, voice what's not working. And, you know, it's just very important that if you do come to people like that, you come kind of prepared with a case and you don't just come venting. But I think that's really fantastic at Google. And everybody's always willing to help, no matter whether they're in your team or not. If they do a completely different thing, I find Google so approachable. So it's not only great from like networking perspective, but also whatever you want to do, or if you want to go above and beyond for your clients and you need something that's not on your hand, there will always be a person to help. So I would say we have full autonomy and flexibility. We also work in a hybrid model. So we get to work 2 days from home and 3 days from the office. We have a couple of weeks where we can work from anywhere. So I can go home and, you know, still do a day or two of working without taking vacation. And I think that's just fantastic.
Oh, that's really good to hear. I can imagine it's a really good environment to work in. You feel heard and listened to. Great. Dora, is the same at Microsoft, or do you have a different experience?
Very similar, I would say. So from my experience, obviously, I started at Microsoft in Dublin doing digital for Slovenia. Everyone was remote because it was middle of COVID. And then slowly we returned back to office, and, you know, we kind of started going back to the office, but we don't have at least in my team or in my organization, I don't have designated how many times a week I need to go to the office, or how long, how much, where from I work. So this is, I think, also part of the autonomy. So the autonomy of where I work, how I work, my hours are very flexible. So I can, you know, plan my life and my work as best fits me. So I jokingly can say I'm like a CEO of my little company inside of Microsoft. I have a lot of teammates that are amazing, ex-teammates that are also amazing. So whenever anyone isn't available, as Sara said, we do have this culture as well of people helping, and which ties back to the hiring, right? So the people they hire, they're trying to make them fit into and be quite open and helpful and, you know, think outside of the box. So this is a very important part, and why I enjoy working for Microsoft is also I have not had experience with micromanagement. So again, I'm very much free to lead my business as best fits me, obviously report and tell leadership what's happening, especially when it comes to some big deals. But in the end, you know, we discuss and I ask for opinions, or they give me their opinions and experience, because I am the most junior in my team. But from there, I've really not had any issues with being junior or, you know, less experienced, because I do learn quite quickly because of the environment that I'm in. So I think that's also something that hopefully is going to be not only in tech giants, but in the future as well in Slovenia, in smaller companies, you know, the ability to do hybrid work, because I have noticed that most employers do demand that people are back in the office 5 days a week. So if there's trust between management and between the employee, you know, if you hired me and you don't trust me, I don't see, you know, a point of you hiring me. I will do my job. And as long as I do my job, if I finish at 3 or at 12 some days or whatever, my, you know, KPIs, I deliver what I'm hired to do, right? So from that perspective, I think that is missing a bit in Slovenia from what I hear from friends. and that's hopefully going to change. Yeah, so that's kind of my experience. Very much free to do as long as you deliver, as Sara said.
Yeah, I actually, you made a really good point. I think Slovenia is still behind about it. I think a lot of the companies are missing this trust in their employees, which is it's especially shown when how they approach hybrid life or work from home or whatever.
And maybe I would just like to add, because I'm very proud of this fact that it's kind of official that also the Slovenian public sector has hybrid work. Yeah. So they're going where most of the commercial sector isn't going, and saying, okay, 2 days a week you can work from home, 2 days you need to be in the office, and the 5th day you can decide, and it's between you and your manager. Obviously depends on the institution, but I was like, I'm very proud of this and very happy to hear, and hopefully more companies will follow.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. Well, I'm really interested to know, because I can imagine whenever you talk about your work, people are very impressed or want to know more, or have maybe some ideas how your work looks like. So I'm interested to know if there's any misconceptions about your work that you came across when talking to other people.
When I moved abroad, everybody thought that I'll burn out and work long hours and be a zombie. But I actually feel I have an amazing work-life balance. And that amazing work-life balance is encouraged at my company. We do have a lot of flexibility, and I will not say that I don't have pretty long days like the one today, for instance, but on the other hand, it kind of all balances out. And I feel that I have enough time in my life to do also other stuff besides work. And I think that's very important. Versus if you think about some people who are not working in tech, but maybe in more like financial or legal companies, like my husband, who is a lawyer, well, that's a different story abroad.
Yeah. From my side, yeah, it would be a very similar experience. So I don't know what the conceptions are, to be fair, but maybe people think maybe the first question would be, oh, you sell Office? I'm like, oh, yeah, there's actually so much that Microsoft does at this point. Obviously, not every person knows, but it's such a broad scope of things that we offer and we do, especially when it comes obviously to B2B, that for me, my direct team or my direct specialists, there's quite a few that cover different areas. So maybe that's the first misconception, that I sell Office. And maybe the second one is, yeah, that I studied computer science, or that I code, or that I'm a very technical person, which I'm not. So I just sometimes say, well, I'm a salesperson. That's kind of the depth we go to.
Okay, great. And Dora, you firstly started working in Microsoft in Dublin, as you already stated, and then decided to continue working for the company in Slovenia. Is Microsoft very pro for moving across countries, or were they against it, or maybe reluctant about it?
So I can't speak in general. I don't think it's very easy to move from Dublin to your respective country. Also, just from the sheer size and amount of headcount that countries have. So if you have 3,000 people in Dublin, you have 70 in Slovenia, which don't only cover Slovenia. So getting a job in Dublin versus getting a job in Slovenia, obviously there's less roles that are available at any given time. For me, I really didn't have an issue in my experience. So how I actually got to this move and why I wasn't expecting it to happen that soon, as I said, it happened after a year of me being at Microsoft, is that there was a role change. So what I'm doing now, the previous account executive moved roles, and this became available. I saw it and I was like, oh, I mean, it's for Slovenia. It doesn't happen often. Why don't I try it? So I contacted the hiring manager quickly. I just, asked for a 15-minute slot, had a quick chat, told him, who I've worked with from the specialist side, because some people, so we have teams and they don't cover the same territories or the same customers, but I have worked with some of these experienced specialists in my previous role in Dublin, so they could vouch for me. And obviously the hiring manager asked them, as the company, as the country manager, just found out a bit more of how I worked. He really liked my energy and what I said on the interview. He actually made a point in saying that he doesn't want someone that's been in Microsoft for 15 years because he needs some change. He needs, let's say, a breath of fresh air, in a sense, a fresh perspective of someone challenging some things that, might have a better way of doing them. So from that perspective, I had a very smooth experience. I had, again, 4 interviews, I think, but half of them already knew me because I was in the company and they knew how I worked. So if I wasn't doing a good job, I probably wouldn't have gotten this job. And then pretty soon I got the job offer and the relocation and everything happened quite quickly. So for me, it wasn't really, nobody was blocking it really, as far as I know.
Okay, that's great to hear. Welcome back to Slovenia. Although it was, how long are you here for now? A year?
Less than a year. Yeah, since May.
Okay, so it's almost a year.
Yeah.
And Sara, is such transitions between countries also possible within Google, or how Google sees this?
Yes, absolutely. But it really depends on the roles. So roles are very often location defined. So as long as your role is defined for a certain country, you have possibility to apply and move to that country. We encourage intercompany transfers. Of course, that's a way how you can retain people. I personally, I've done 6 roles since I joined Google. Was almost 7 years ago, and I've been a part of I think 5 different teams. And 4 years in Google, I moved to UK. So I was first in Ireland, and then I moved to the UK around 2 years ago now. The only thing to say is it's not like you say, oh, I'll change the country. You need to find the role that is in that country. You need to apply for that role. It's not only that you're competing with internal people who want to transfer, but also with external applications. And then it really depends what the hiring manager is looking for and how you perform in interviews. And that's how you move the role.
Okay. You've mentioned you changed 6 roles, right? Was those was the changes made because of the promotion, or did you just wanted to change the areas of your work?
Well, in my first case, we had some reorg, so I kind of naturally landed in a similar role but for a different market. Then I applied to role because I was looking for increased scope and responsibilities of work. Then I got promoted in between. I got a chance to do the role, but with slightly larger clients in a similar team. Then I again got promoted. Then I applied for a role in the UK, and then I was a maternity cover for someone. And then I naturally, at some point, got that role. So it's like, changing the role doesn't mean you get a promotion. It can actually sometimes slow down the promotion process. But I think changing the role really brings you extremely good experiences. You learn more. You never feel stuck because there is always something new that gets you started. And that's how it's also very nice to stay within the company, because you just keep on seeing the opportunities ahead of you.
Okay.
And I think that's one thing I would also like to maybe emphasize is that you're also kind of expected to move roles, to get promoted, to not stay at the same spot for years and years, which is many times a bit difficult for customers or someone that is in a smaller or Slovenian company, employed for 20 years in the same role. Sometimes they think that, we move because we're not doing a good job, or that because we're not successful, and they get rid of us. But it's actually the opposite. So if you are successful and performing in your role, you are expected to find opportunities for growth and to move roles and to get more responsibilities. So you're not really expected to stay in the same job for more than a few years. years. Of course, it depends. The more senior jobs you have, you know, the longer it takes for you to really, you know, get to grips and to really understand what you're doing and then go for another promotion. But for me, for example, in the beginning, when I started my career at Salesforce, in 2 years, I switched 3 teams and 3 roles because it was quite a very defined sales career progression path and plan, where you went, you know, from an entry level to mid to, and then it was a road towards account executive. But for the account executive part, I switched companies. And here I started in Microsoft with a bit smaller companies in Slovenia. And then I switched to what we call enterprise. So kind of the biggest customers that we have. So this is kind of what's expected and natural, at least in tech and at least in, you know, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce.
But at Google, we do also encourage transfers in different directions. So you don't only need to grow up, you can grow on the side. Like maybe you start your career in like entry-level sales and you want to go to marketing or HR. You just need to network very well, learn things, do side projects. And I think that's fantastic.
I think that's important to say. Yes, it's important if you are looking to switch organizations to make sure that you have a plan. Usually my managers work with you as well, and we all need to have career progression plans. And it's not necessarily in the same organization, but they also then help you find new connections, people, and for you to establish yourself as a name in other organizations if you're looking to switch or, you know, switch paths or switch career completely. So that's something that you need to plan in advance, and they can definitely help you make it happen.
Okay, perfect. So now I have a question that's actually really bothering me, or I'm very interested to know. Both of the companies you work for have a lot of different services, products, apps, etc. For Google example, Google Photos, Calendar, etc., etc. And for Microsoft, Excel, Teams, SharePoint, and so on. Is there any of those products, services, apps that isn't very well known amongst the public, but you really, really like and appreciate, and you would like for other people to know about as well? Maybe Dora, you go first.
I mean, well, no, we have many things, but also, you know, when it comes to most of our products, they're not free. So it's kind of a, you know, a catch-22. But if we're just looking for my favorite product, I'd say Teams, because I do spend a lot of time in Teams. It's connected with Outlook. It's, you know, it has everything in it. We do account planning there. We do everything in Teams. So for me, Teams would be my favorite, although it's not a secret application at all.
That's true. Okay, great. What about for you, Sara?
I mean, I'm definitely obsessed with Google Maps, YouTube, Google Photos that have the most amazing AI search, like where I basically have photos since I was 10 years old on, and I can just literally type, I don't know, red sweater or party, and I'll find the photo that I'm looking for. I think that's amazing. But one that you might not know, it's Google Arts and Culture. It's an app that has a collection of world museums. Whatever picture, whatever thing in a museum that you want to look up, you'll find it there. You'll find all the information about it. You'll be able to like use it in a VR mode. It's really amazing. And as well as it has a lot of information on culture. I think we recently done some project with Slovenia too. And there is a part around Slovenian culture, and I really had fun reading it. And I learned a few new things about Slovenia.
Oh, wow.
I think we should make it a trick question, actually, Špela, as well. So what's my favorite application or a thing from Google, and what's Sarah's about Microsoft?
Okay, I'm up for it. You can go first. What's your favorite one?
I'm so typical. For me, it's Google Maps. I use them every day. So very.
I agree.
Well, for me as the true Googler, I don't use Microsoft products.
Oh, Sara.
But well, I like LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is a part of Microsoft. Here we go.
Okay. Great. Okay, and now maybe some general questions on how you see things in the future. Do you have any ideas or opinions on how the industry will evolve over the next 5 years.
I think I can be very short. At this point, we see, different news, progress, announcements, applications, startups, everything on a daily basis. So my LinkedIn, if we're already discussing LinkedIn, every day has something new from Microsoft or from companies we invest in. For example, everyone now knows ChatGPT. Probably everyone also knows that one of the early investors and biggest investors is Microsoft, and that now we have it integrated in almost every one of our SaaS offerings. And that's going to market slowly more and more. We use it for not only work, like as a productivity tool, but also it's coming out as a security tool, also helping, fence off attackers for big companies, which is awesome. And yeah, every day there's something new. And I think we're in the last, 100 years, 50 years, 20 years, it's faster and faster. But I think we're now at the point where it's weekly and monthly. And if companies aren't adopting new technologies for whatever purposes, they're falling behind more and more quickly. So that's a bit of a concern, actually, I think, for Microsoft, and why we're trying to work very closely with our customers to get them on board, to really help them adopt the new technologies in the new era.
Okay. Sara?
I mean, definitely AI, and the rise of cloud computing, everything is in the cloud these days, and companies really will, those who are not adjusted yet, at some point, I think they will really need to adjust towards the fact that everything is in cloud. There is also this big fuss around the Internet of Things, which is basically a network of physical objects that are connected to the internet, and you can do tons of things with it, from like manufacturing to healthcare, etc. But maybe I can answer it, because I not only work in tech, but I also kind of work in the advertising industry, because I work on the Google ad side of things. Everything right now is around first party data, then privacy focused marketing. There is, a lot of discussions around new regulations that are coming in place, and businesses need to adjust. Everything needs to be much more personable than it was perhaps in the past. But then also AI is at the forefront of everything that is done in the advertising industry.
Okay. I see here we only have 15 minutes left, so I'll give you my last question, and I invite the audience to ask anything else, because the last 15 minutes is dedicated to your questions. But yes, both of you were employed both in Slovenia and abroad, as we already discussed. And I'm interested to know if there's any practice or custom from Slovenia that you would transfer abroad, or vice versa. And maybe Dora, you can answer first.
Well, as I said, I didn't have a full-time job in Slovenia other than Microsoft, so I don't think I can speak, from much experience. So saying vice versa, so from abroad to Slovenia, or what I experienced at Microsoft, as I mentioned, the flexibility, the trust, the measuring of impact in your roles. So I think that's something where maybe employers that are looking to measure or know or see what their employees are doing, it's sometimes as simple as setting some KPIs, setting up also, I might go on out on a limb here, but also tie the compensation with those KPIs and those results, right? So this is your job, this is your priorities, this is what you need to achieve in the next year, and then you can measure it and discuss the progress and also get paid based on it, right? So I think the variable part is something that maybe I would bring into Slovenia a bit more, because I think it does help, with the flexibility, with the trust, and also with motivating people. Because, okay, for working 4 days a week, for example, that's a new trend, or working from home. But I think this is a part that maybe would be missing. From Slovenia to abroad, as I said, I don't really have that many ideas, but if I figure something out, I will let you know. Maybe Sara can give some more feedback.
Okay, Sara, I'm interested to know.
You're muted.
Yeah.
I struggle finding an example from what companies do, but for sure, Slovenia has much better environment for mothers and for pregnant ladies. I think it has one of the best maternity leaves in the world, if I dare to say so.
Sure.
And while I think tech companies, like the big tech, does a very good job, we have good maternity leave policy at Google too. I would say that if I just think about UK and Ireland, where I worked, that's not the case everywhere, and it's not a standard. And so I don't think we appreciate what we have from like social benefits sometimes in Slovenia enough, because it's amazing. And then the other way around, everything what Dora said, for sure, I think it's really important to have clearly defined expectations and OKRs that you need to deliver in order to perform. One practice that I didn't have in Slovenia, but I'm sure it differs from company to company, is like regular structure one-to-ones with the managers. I find that an extremely great practice that Google does. Like, I meet with my manager every week, and it's not to micromanage me, but it's for me to bring up the challenges that I'm facing, things that I want to discuss, questions that I need to ask him. And I just find it extremely helpful, because then he also knows exactly what I do, and it's really easy for him to give me feedback and assess my performance. So regular one-to-ones are definitely a great practice.
Wow. Okay.
And maybe if I add, Špela, because Sara was mentioning the maternity leave, you know, because I now have a Slovenian contract, and all the, let's say, benefits or the way Slovenian pay slips are structured and what we get. I think in Ireland, I think the same in the UK, it's a much more simple structure of you getting paid. For example, they would say, if anyone is looking for or is going to get an offer from a Dublin company or a UK company, it's basically gonna look like, okay, I will have a salary of 50,000 euros per year, period. And that's it. There's no, I don't know, extra mentioned in this contract. There's no cars, there's no, how do you say, food, the malica, there's no kilometrina, there's no regress, 13 paycheck, like all those things. No, it's kind of like, okay, you get 50K. And then, for example, if you are, as we mentioned, you know, in sales, you have a sales plan, and then you have that defined as well, like based on your base salary, etc. So it's a bit of a different pay slip and a bit of a different pluses and minuses, because it's way more defined and it's way more dependent on you, versus here, you know, you have the regress, you have this, you have that, and you can kind of manipulate or get a bit more depending on month to month, you know, how much you are at work and how much you aren't, etc. So that's, I think, definitely, it was quite different for me when I moved, and then I realized, oh, because my contract is kind of based on the UK one, so the structure of it. But then in Slovenia, you also get this and you get that, and you get all these things added to it. And I'm like, oh, okay, so actually my salary is not this, but it's that.
Yeah. I think we have a lot of benefits that don't really appreciate before we realize how different it is abroad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's time for questions from the audience, I guess. If anyone has them, you can write them in chat or just...
Yeah, I see Mateja has a hand raised. So Mateja.
Hello, Mateja is my name. Thank you, Sara and Dora, for being here on this program and giving us such a great input about the companies that you work in. First of all, I have one question, which is the following. You're great friends since year 2, and today you work in 2 companies which are a little bit fighting at the moment. So Microsoft already, I think you told us, Dora, that they invest over $10 billion in IE, and they're giving a little job or a little challenge to Google at the moment with the Chat GPT. So the question mine is to Sara in this case, how is Google dealing with this situation with the Chat GPT at the moment?
So we announced we have something called BART, which is a very similar thing to ChatGPT. We are taking a slightly more cautious approach because AI has a lot of implications and a lot of things can go wrong. And currently we have released BART to to few markets on a sign-up basis. We have it, for instance, in the UK. I've been playing around with it, and it's amazing. But at Google, we've been using AI for a very long time. We use AI in search. We use AI in Google Photo product that I mentioned. We use AI in almost everything we do with advertising, which is still a very large chunk of Google revenue. And we use AI in all of our Google Cloud products. So I would absolutely not say that we fell asleep. We're just taking a different approach to the topic.
Yeah, for sure. And my last question for the both companies, for the both girls here, the average age of employee in the group, in team that you work in, what is the average age? Are all the Gen Z, or what is the age that?
It depends.
Yeah, for both of you is the question. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dora. Go, Dora.
So for me, actually, in my team, let's say under the same manager, I'm the only Gen Z, so I'm the only one my age. Maybe, I mean, it really depends, right? So I am, as you know, as I mentioned, my manager and my management hired me into this team so that we have more diversity and so that we are, you know, including more and more of my generation to learn from the older generation, more experienced generation, but also bring in the new trends or the new challenges and ideas. So I actually don't know the average age because that's not something that is shared. We just congratulate each other with when someone has their birthday, but we don't really know their age. But I can say that I'm the only one from Gen Z and that I am the youngest in my team. Yeah.
Okay. Dora, but you're not Gen Z, you're a millennial. I hate to break it to you, you're old.
Okay.
You know that because fun fact.
81.
Yeah, no, my previous manager, actually, she had this, she was doing a research, right? So she posted in our WhatsApp, can you please answer these questions? And we had to mark, and I actually had to look it up, like which gen am I? And I forgot already which gen I am. So there you go.
Thank you, Dora. Sara?
Yeah, I don't think we publicly published the number, like the average age, so I can't really answer that question, but it's certainly not just Gen Z. I think we're also becoming slightly more mature organization throughout the time. I would say that, at least in my department, because I'm in quite I would say like a global sales role, I'm still on the younger side of people that I work with. But then when I was in Dublin, where we do have a lot of entry-level roles, I very quickly became older than others. So it really depends what location you're in. But I would say that for instance, in EMEA, we have Dublin headquarters where majority of entry-level roles are based, but there is also very experienced professionals. So there, maybe the statistics would be younger than if you look at in-country offices, where we do have a bit more experienced hires, and with that, I would say the age also goes up.
Yeah, for example, my first team and my first few teams at Salesforce, I was the oldest. So I was kind of like feeling a bit old, feeling that I started my career quite late, you know, sometimes doubting like, oh, I should have started this earlier, a few years earlier. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, it doesn't make that big of a difference. And then I moved to Microsoft and I was the youngest one in my team. So, you know, it can change very quickly. And as Sara said, for sure, if you just want a trend or a generalization, in Dublin you would find a bit more younger generally, and then in country, you know, field as we call it, maybe a bit older, but that's just very, if we put it very high level, very broad.
Thank you for that.
There's an opportunity for everyone. That's what we're trying to say.
Okay, I see another hand raised. Angers.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I heard that you also touched upon the technicalities. So my question for Dora, is when SharePoint will actually sync like Google Docs do, and for Sara, when Google Docs will actually have natively some functions. Kidding aside, my real question: have you ever been tempted to work in a small company, or if not, is the culture that you described today, or would you also consider in some aspect the size of the company itself that gives you something, and what perhaps that convinces you to stay in a corporation?
So for me personally, I have not had the need or the desire to move to a smaller company. Many of my colleagues after a few years do go and go to a startup or do their own thing, so establish their own companies. For me right now, I still have a lot to learn, and I think in this environment and in this, size of a company and with the experience and the pace of technology, I'm still learning every day. So with this surrounding, if I would move to a smaller company, I think my promotion or my development opportunities would be obviously lower, and more would be expected from me, to bring to the table. So, I mean, maybe this changes in the future, but for now, at this point in my career, in big tech, or let's say Microsoft, is offering me, learning in every step, and I think I still have a lot to learn. So I'm staying for now in this space.
Never say never. I think for me, the most important thing is that I believe in company's mission, and I think that whatever company does inspires me. Like I'm in a sales role, and I could not be selling something that I don't know what it is or don't believe in. I think that's the most important thing for me in the company. And then the second thing is, what kind of culture does that company have, and whether they have great reputation as an employer, whether they have a reputation to have great learning opportunities. So it's not so much about the size of the company, but just opportunities within that company and the mission of it, I would say.
Okay, thanks. That was insightful.
Yeah, and I see there is a question in the chat that is kind of connected with your answer. We already touched it, but the question is, how is with big corporates, promotions and possibilities to grow? Do you need to push for it, or it comes every year naturally?
I think it's a mix of both. You definitely need to push for it. One part is your performance, and then second part is alignment, on what is expected of you and what you need to do to get the promotion. It definitely does not happen. So speaking from experience at Salesforce, at Microsoft, it doesn't just happen for you because there's obviously limited budgets or limited headcount in the next role that you would be promoting into. And there's other people that are going for that budget or for that role. So it doesn't just happen on its own.
I agree. I think you need to, in Google, you need to prove that you're consistently performing on the next level. And we have certain criteria based on which we are being assessed. So we have a program called, I think it's Google Reviews and Development, GRAT. I think if you Google GRAT, you're gonna find publicly available information about it. But basically, we, together with our manager, every year and every quarter, we set our expectations that are aligned with kind of the attributes that Google is looking for us to deliver. And then every quarter we have a check-in with our manager, and then also we have a performance review with the manager. So we are very clear where we are delivering, where we are maybe doing better than what's expected from our kind of stage that we are at the company, and where we perhaps need to improve. And once you get to the stage where you're kind of overperforming anywhere, and you do that consistently over time, then you're kind of ready for promotion.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And Sanya posted another question. How do you stay up to date with the latest technology trends and advancements? Do you have any cool blogs, websites, people to follow on LinkedIn?
Yeah, for me, it's mostly LinkedIn. It's internal communication, but sometimes LinkedIn is faster or has, let's say, more relevant things for me based on the people I follow, the posts I like. So for me, it's LinkedIn, and I actually, I'm kind of, I like stuff so that I can then share it with my customers, whatever I think is relevant. And yeah, I don't really have top of mind someone that I follow and that, gives me the best or the freshest news, because as I said, at this point at Microsoft, with such a broad scope of technologies and innovation, every day there's an announcement, and sometimes my customers know something before I do because I just missed it and something else came up, or I was too busy to check, you know, the latest news. So yeah, definitely I don't have a straightforward answer. It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Yeah, for sure, LinkedIn. But I'm also like, I'm working with luxury industry, so I need to really stay on top of the trends there. So I have set Google alerts for my clients and all the competitors. And so every day in my inbox, I get basically things that are happening in the industry. And that really gives me a good understanding of it. And also because I also work on the advertising front, I read like Advertising Age and similar newspapers. I think Slovenia would be like Marketing Magazine. And occasionally I also read Financial Times and Economist.
Okay. I have a question, Teja, if I may.
Okay, yeah, sure.
What is the biggest challenge you face in your day-to-day life? Maybe for you, Dora.
I think it's, for me, it changes every day. Sometimes I have very much like great and then not so great and great, and or great in the morning and then the awful afternoon. I think the challenge consistently is, you know, definitely, as Sara said, you know, it's something that I always say, you know, cloud is here, and all of our technologies, all the newest things that you can do to be up to speed, to be the most advanced, you know, company, to offer the best service to your citizens. It's in the cloud, it's cloud native, you cannot get it on premise. So, you know, Google being a cloud first, cloud native company, Microsoft still very much has the legacy, has the customers, and there's a lot of work involved in that. So I think that's a lot of times a challenge where you're making progress, but then you aren't, because it's such a long process to have, because it's so important, right? If someone is used to keeping something here, and now you're saying they should give it to you there, like understanding it, getting trust, as Sara said, the laws, GDPR, etc. It's just, you know, a very big challenge, understandably so, right? But in today's world, it's just so fast-paced and changing that we just need to have those conversations all of the time. And sometimes it's very challenging and sometimes it's very slow. So I think that's quite the biggest challenge that keeps on coming, and it's here to stay, to be fair.
Yeah, but I can imagine it's a lot of pressure to be always on top of the game and just, yeah. And for you, Sara, what is your biggest challenge?
I mean, working with clients always brings the questions you have no freaking clue how to answer. So you need to learn how to say, hey, I don't know, I'll look it up. Or sometimes also you need to actually learn how to say no, and that can be really hard. But from the industry perspective, working in ads and ad tech, privacy is a humongous topic, and I'm working on a global client scope. So every single country or like region has their own regulations, new laws that are coming in, and it's very hard to stay on top of all of them all the time and understand exactly what's.
Okay. I can see Sanya has another question. L&D budgets for learning, webinars, seminars, courses, mentor/coach. Do they support this? So do they support those things that were mentioned in her question at Microsoft, maybe, Dora?
Yeah, so I can say at Microsoft, I can say at Salesforce, very much so. So one part of it is something that's organized for teams based on what their role is, and organized by the company themselves, like by bringing in some speakers or some coaches. And then the second part is, yeah, there's, you know, different programs that different companies have. Usually, let's say they're called education budgets or education allowance. They all do it differently. So, you know, we can say that they all have it, but they all have a different approach to it and different rules to it. But yeah, they support the webinars. I think Sara is going to share her education story from recent years as well, which is, I think, very much inspirational and awesome, of how they support, you know, education, finishing degrees. and also whatever you might find, even books or, you know, some longer courses, everything. If you have a reason, you just talk with your manager and you agree on what it is, how long it takes, why is it important to you. Even learning languages, for example, it makes sense if you're working that market and you don't speak the language. So yeah, to put it shortly, there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, Google co-funded me finishing my master's degree that I kind of left when I got a job in the second year of master's, and I actually only wrote it during the COVID. Then I think I took like at least 1 year of one-to-one German courses because I was working for a German team, and I was able to expense a partial amount of that. I did a coaching diploma while at Google, and Google paid me like 2/3 for it. So it's fantastic. And we also have kind of personal development funds where I can expense singing or guitar lessons. Like I only get a part of it back, but still I find it pretty amazing. Though, to be very honest, I worked for a Slovenian company that actually expensed the entire amount of of the work-related courses that I did. So maybe, see, I have an answer to you about what I thought was great in Slovenia. My experience was that they paid the entire amount, not a proportional amount of it.
Okay, it's very interesting. They actually really support that you also expand your knowledge, like in your personal hobbies or some, not just in your career, which is very impressive.
I think it's part of, you know, the well-being and being happy at work and work-life balance. You know, talent, we call it, people are difficult, especially in the tech space, or especially when we both lived in Dublin, where everyone is present in Dublin. So the talent wars are very much there. And you need to retain your employees. And if a happy employee is a more loyal employee than an unhappy employee. So I think they kind of figured out the balance that even if they co-fund this and they invest here and you get money for whatever, it still costs them less than you being unhappy and leaving to a competitor, because the onboarding process, the learning, it's very long and quite expensive for any employer. So be it a small company or a big company. And I think that's something that maybe is also should be considered by more companies.
Okay. I can see here we have a very specific question from Christina. How do you treat a company using Linux? Does any of...
I'm guessing that's for me. We love Linux. Actually, Azure is very open to any kind of system, operating system. You can Google it, you can see. So we have changed very much since, let's say, the 90s or the early 2000s. We are based on different partnerships. We have partnerships with SAP, which you probably would think it's only a competitor. We have partnerships with all kinds of companies. So the ecosystem is very much not closed, and the strategy is open and accepting of basically everyone and everything.
Okay, thank you, Dora. I'm also interested to know, how did the first day at Google and Microsoft look like? I can imagine it can be very, either very exciting or very intimidating. How did you experience it?
So since I'm unmuted, maybe I'll go first. So actually, I think the more relevant would be my first day at Salesforce, because first day at Microsoft was in COVID and lockdown on my computer. Okay. Fun fact, actually, I needed to get access, to the computer. My manager was supposed to give it to me, but they were on vacation, so I started 1 day later. But at Salesforce, it was quite, obviously intimidating. I came into a new country. I moved into an apartment in the middle of nowhere, and I walked to work. And I left the building actually of my apartment, and I exited into a courtyard, so I couldn't leave. So I had to climb through a window to get to work. But there were 70 people starting that day with me. So I definitely definitely didn't feel like I was on a spot or anyone was looking at me. It was a big room. Everyone got handed laptops. We learned how to log in, etc. Then we had lunch with everyone and with our managers, where I also didn't know who my manager was. She approached me and asked me how I was. And I asked her, is this also your first day? Are you also a BPA? She's like, no, Dora, I am your new manager. Because she was very sweet and like looked very young, and she was quite a bit shorter than me. So it was quickly became quite an how do you say, a relaxed environment and atmosphere. And then from there, I think it's also important to know that we usually have buddies. So you are assigned a person to onboard you, help you understand your role, and to kind of get you going a bit faster, and that is also counted towards their promotion and their contribution. So it's kind of when we were mentioning the KPIs and how to get promoted and how to go above and beyond your role, that's one of the things, and why we do have in all companies that I've worked for kind of a program where people do take a lot of their time to help you get onboarded.
Okay. I've never heard that companies do that. I've heard about in student, like when university, but never for a company, which is a really...
Yeah, I had buddies in every job role, Salesforce and Microsoft, yeah.
Oh, okay, great. And Sara, for you, the first day, did you have to climb the window to get in?
No. It was like 7 years ago, but I remember I was walking next to some Grand Canal in Dublin, and I felt like I'm on fire. I felt so good. It was a really good, it was a really good day. And as Dora said, they organized everything for you. They even took a bus to get us a social security number in Ireland, which was fantastic because I really didn't need to worry about those things. They also pay you relocation, so it's very easy for you. But what I do remember, at Google, we're known to have free food. I overdosed on food so much that I barely was following the training that we had for the entire day, because I just saw everything and I wanted to have everything. It was like somebody will take it away from me tomorrow. And so I have this memory that I barely was breathing as I got home. But we had a fantastic onboarding. I think like for a month and a half, when I was an entry-level hire, we just had trainings and we were learning about stuff. So it's really great because it sets you up for success in the company. Well, then when I moved to London and when I was intra-company transferee, then it's much quicker to onboard, like 2 weeks, and you're doing your role kind of.
Yeah, I can imagine it's easier when you're already in the company. Okay, I think this concludes our event for this evening. I thank you so much for joining us, Sara and Dora, and all the audience, of course, as well. I hope you had an interesting time, that you've learned something new. And yes, if there's anything else we can do for you, if you have any more questions, you can always email us and we'll try to get to you as soon as possible. Teja, do you have any last words for this event?
Yeah, I would just like to thank again to Sara and Dora. You were amazing guests, so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having us.
Can I just ask something? Are there any foreign employees in Slovenia, Microsoft, Dora?
Yes, actually, until recently we had. He relocated, moved to another role, but yeah, there are. So depending on the role, depending on the time, so very much fluent or fluid.
Okay.
Yes, as Špela said, if you have any further questions, you can always email us and we're gonna forward the questions to Sara and Dora, or you can find them on LinkedIn.
Yeah, totally. Just add us on LinkedIn. We're very happy to help. And thank you so much for hosting us.
The Microsoft technology that Sara uses.
That was a bit of a joke, of course.
I know. That's why I asked the question.
So yeah, have a nice evening. And I hope to see you in the next event. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.